everybody, and welcome. My name is Dr. Heather Carden, and I am super excited to come to you this Thursday night at 7:15 Central Standard Time. I'm live on Ask Dr. Heather, and I'm live on my Zoom here just to help more people understand the ketone conversation. I made a commitment this year in January to help people optimize their health, better understand how they can feel better on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to shift my light here a little bit and see if that helps. So I'm so excited to be here. So you guys are on Facebook Live here and on Zoom here. So a couple minutes about myself, and I'm only going to keep you about 15 or 20 minutes. I want to make a weekly commitment to do a Ketone 101 to help you understand a little bit more about this conversation. So hopefully everybody can hear me, and welcome from wherever you're joining me from, whether it is in the US or Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, Canada. We've got people from all different places jumping on. My name is Dr. Heather Carden. I am the co-owner of Carden Center for Wellness. I am celebrating my 20th year of practicing. I am also a mother of 4 amazing young men. I'm an independent promoter for Prove It, and I'm the co-chair of Low Carb Kansas City. So what does that mean? That means that I focus on food when it comes to helping people optimize their health and wellness. So food is something that we all must use every single day. So that's the basis for a lot of our treatments that we use, or a lot of the platform we use in our office. So as a wellness practitioner, a functional medicine practitioner, we see how the body's operating. So what that means is, how is the body going to sleep at night? How is the body waking up? How is it performing throughout the day? Are you having cravings? Are you forgetting people's names? Are you able to remember how to drive to someone's house? So those small little cognitive behaviors tell us what's happening inside our brain. And I'm here to tell you that we've all been involved in a really, really bad experiment. It was called low fat. It went on from the 1970s to the 1980s to the 1990s and so on. But the great news is now is that the cat is out of the bag. I love cats, so I had to talk about my cat a minute. The cat's out of the bag. We're here to tell you that this no-fat diet has led us to a disease of civilization where numbers are higher than they've ever been, whether it's cancer, cardiovascular disease, inflammation, autoimmune disease. All those are on the rise. What can we attribute that to? The last 4 to 5 decades, where we were told, take out the fat because fat is bad for you, and then we filled that all with sugar. So a little bit about our body, so we understand how that runs, is that our body needs energy to do the things, to talk, to walk, to vacuum, to do our day-to-day jobs. We have 2 fuel sources. We have either glucose or we have ketones. So glucose comes from things like eating. I had my son grab a bag of popcorn in my house. We usually don't have that, but carbohydrates can be things like pasta. It can be vegetables, fruits, legumes, cakes, cookies, pies, sweet things, drinks, sodas, vegetables. All those are carbohydrates. Our body uses insulin, and we break it down and we get glucose. And we use glucose as a fuel to run our body. Glucose doesn't last very long though. It's not very efficient, and so we get energy for about 30 minutes, and then we find ourselves either craving sugar again or needing to eat again. The second macronutrient we have is called proteins. Those come from things that used to have eyeballs or used to have legs and used to walk. So that would be either cows or chickens or pigs or fish or things like that. Our proteins break down again via insulin into amino acids. If we overconsume amino acids, again, this is kind of the Atkins theory where we were going to eat a whole bunch of protein, right? Our whole plate was going to be like 60 to 70% protein and cut out the carbohydrates. We know that actually excess proteins can be harmful. They can be dehydrating at the cellular level. They also get stored in the form of glucose or fat for a rainy day. So a high-fat diet is not the way to go. We've all tried that, and Dr. Atkins really did lead the movement with cutting out some of the garbage. However, we found out that we don't want to do high protein either. The third macronutrient we have is called ketones. Ketones come from healthy fats, things like nuts and seeds. I had my son go grab me an avocado and a big jug of coconut oil. So if you're over the age of 29, you've probably heard that fat is bad. Fat makes you sick. Fat makes us tired. Fat has caused all the diseases that happened in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and so on. But now we know, again, because the data is out, that we've had a rise in all those diseases of excesses of carbohydrates. So cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, inflammation. So really what it comes down to is, how are you fueling your body? Again, we have two fuel sources. We can either use glucose, which comes from carbohydrates, or we can use ketones, which come from healthy fats. We actually come into this world when we're born in a state of ketosis. That means that we are burning fat for fuel. So when the babies are in our tummies at about 20 weeks, babies are in ketosis, they're burning fat for fuel. When they come out, as long as they're breastfed, they're in ketosis, and they're actually in that state of ketosis, burning fat for fuel, until we start introducing carbohydrates or formulas, things like that. And think of that baby for just a moment. That's why we call ketones being that native state. Because when babies are tired, they just go to sleep, right? And when they wake up, they're happy, they're giggly, they're ready to go. And then when they're hungry, they let you know they're hungry. And when they're done eating, they simply just stop eating and they're done. And that's it. Whether you still want to breastfeed the other side or you have more stuff on the plate, the baby simply stops. We'll translate that to when you start becoming an adult. Adults can't tell, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Is my blood sugar dropping? Maybe I just need more water, because all those things can make us feel hungry or hangry. Even 2 to 3% dehydration can make us feel like we want to have something to eat. Or we know that sugars lead to cravings. So maybe we're not hungry, but it just really looks good and kind of smells good. You want to have one more bite. Happens all the time when we eat carbohydrates. We'll just have a couple chips and dip. Next thing we know, 15, 20 minutes later, another couple chips and dips, or it's cookies, or it's a second serving of carbohydrate, or it's a few more goldfish, whatever that carbohydrate may be, because carbohydrates are not a very efficient fuel source. How do we know this? Because again, we look at what's happening over the diseases of obesity and civilization, mental health disorders. We know that when we come into this world, we're burning fat for fuel as ketones. We also know as we age, the aging brain actually prefers ketones over glucose. It can uptake that energy much, much better than it can glucose, which again is coming from sugary foods, cakes, cookies, pies, your favorite sports drinks. So where's all this information been? Like, why haven't we heard about this? We've actually have heard about it. If you go and Google ketones, and you're going to see the cover of Time magazine was telling us back in the 1990s that we should really be putting butter on our broccoli. It was also telling us that fat was not really causing all the inflammation. It was sugar was causing inflammation. So if we know that we have two fuel sources, we either have ketones from fats or we have glucose from sugar. Let's talk about sugar for a minute. We look at that rise of diabetes, type 1, type 2, type 3. Always on the rise of diabetics. How many do you have in your own family? All that means is the body is unable to keep up with the demands of the carbohydrates that you've been consuming, and the body's simply wearing out. So now we've got to use ketones or use insulin exogenously because we've overutilized what our body wanted us to have. We also know that we could use a source of fuel called ketones, which come from fat. Normally, to get into a state of ketosis, we would go on a ketogenic diet. So the standard American diet is pretty simple. It is 45 to 65% carbohydrates. And think about this, there's no essential carbohydrate. So you can go your whole life without a carbohydrate. You don't have to have a banana or oatmeal for healthy cholesterol. So there's no essential carbohydrate, but we do have essential fatty acids and essential amino acid. So which means we could go our whole lifetime eating plentiful greens, fats, oils, meats, and having decadent, delicious meals without having the cause and effect that we get when we consume sugar. So when we have a diet high in sugar, standard Western diet, which is again 45 to 65% carbohydrates, low in fat, and moderate in protein, sugar feeds inflammation. We know that too much sugar causes diabetes. We know that sugar delays wound care healing. We also know that we call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So we can go on and on down the list of everything that's increasing. There's even books called Potatoes Are Better Than Prozac. We see what sugar does to mental health disorders. We see that sugars excite our neurotransmitters, they overexcite our nervous system. Think how many people are walking around just nervous and anxious and their nervous systems are overexcited. Now we have an option because the truth is out. The cat is out of the bag, so to speak. We've studied the ketogenic diet since the 1920s. And even before we started studying that, we can think that babies came into the world in ketosis. That's really telling us something, right? So if we come into this world in that perfect innate state, it makes sense that we should try to mimic that throughout the rest of our life, to anti-age, to have that longevity that we want to have, that long active life we want to have. So now what's so exciting is that the word ketone in 2017 is one of the top Googled words. We've been talking about ketones and high fats in our diet in our clinic for years. A lot of other people, leading research, have actually been ostracized about talking about eating healthy fats, eating whale fat, eating, red meats, eating the skin on the chicken and all that kind of good stuff that we need to be doing, the fat on the meat, and eating the avocado, right? Eating all those healthy fats. We were told not to do that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now we know that's led to a rise in all those diseases of inflammation. So sugar, as we talked about, causes lots of healthy disease processes. So how do we get back a hold of what's going on? How do we get back to the basics? How do we unwind what's happened and what's been told? Well, the social media and platforms like this, like Facebook Live or like Zoom, are giving us an amazing opportunity to learn more about what's happening in our bodies. We're actually seeing that scientific data being done today as we speak globally around the world. You're seeing everyone talking about ketones, ketones, ketones. People like, Dr. Heather, what's a ketone? What is it? What's everyone talking about? Ketone is a fuel source for your body. That's how you came into this world. We've all been in ketosis. Not only when you were born, but maybe you had the flu and you were sick for 4 or 5 days. You could have been in ketosis. Maybe you went on a ketogenic diet, which I didn't finish that story. So in a ketogenic diet, instead of having 45 to 65% carbohydrates, we lower the carbohydrates down and we replace that energy source with fats, and we have a diet that's about 75 to 80% fats. Coconut oil, nuts, seeds, bacon, and did I say bacon? I think I said bacon, and dark chocolate, and coconut oil, all those amazing nuts and seeds. All those healthy fats break down to what's called ketones or ketone bodies. Our body knows exactly how to utilize them. Remember, as babies, we're in that state of ketosis when we ate when we were hungry and we slept when we were tired and we giggled and smiled half the time, right? Well, that doesn't happen as we start to age. So going back to that basics, what we need to do is start transitioning our bodies. We need to start educating ourselves, taking out the garbage. So the garbage would be things that have artificial flavoring, artificial coloring, fruits that are covered with chocolate-covered berries, and we're buying nuts covered with chocolate and other type of things. We just simply go back to the basics. We tell our body to eat when hungry and eat fat first. That may seem like a hard thing to understand because, again, oftentimes we eat because it looks really, really good, or, gosh, that reminds me of my grandma, it's apple pie, it smells like her, I just want to have a bite. I'm not hungry, but it just looks good, I know it tastes good. Or you're watching something on TV which stimulates something to say, I want to go eat something. Or we've been conditioned to eat because we're happy or we're sad or we want to celebrate something, or for some reason we have friends over, we need to eat again. So we've been conditioned to have those foods and those carbohydrates, and we were told don't eat fat because fat is bad, and have those 6 mini meals a day and be ahead of the blood sugar game, because being ahead of the blood sugar game on a high carbohydrate diet prevents you from breaking lean muscle mass. Actually, we know that when you're on a ketogenic diet, when you're burning fat for fuel, your diet's 80% high in fat, and we're about 5% carbohydrates, so 4 to 6 cups of veggies, which is awesome for everyone to have. We know that we actually protect our lean muscle mass, where we know sugar actually dips into our lean muscle mass. We know that healthy fats decrease inflammation. You can Google this information out there. I'm not a researcher. I'm in the trenches talking with patients, reading blood work every day. We know that ketones stop an enzyme called myostatin. So it stops our body from breaking down our lean muscle mass and protects it. It's our native state. Again, that baby needs to grow. It wants to protect that lean muscle mass. But sugar, actually, after you run through it, starts tapping into our lean muscle mass. We know that sugars actually increase inflammation. You can Google that all day long. There's a list of foods that cause inflammation. Sugar causes inflammation all day long, whether it's cardiovascular inflammation, maybe it's dementia or Alzheimer's, maybe it's thyroiditis inflammation, maybe it's rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune. Anything itis is inflammation, can be caused by sugar. We know that fats The specific ketone body, beta hydroxybutyrate, the study was done in 2015, so it is recent and current, tells us that we found out that fats, when you're in a state of ketosis, burning fat for fuel, actually stop an inflammatory cascade from happening. It's a bunch of interleukins, 1, 3, and 6 we won't talk about in macrophages, but it stops our body from having that big cascade of inflammation. So decreasing the sugars can actually, and replacing it with fat, can actually help reduce pain and reduce inflammation at that cellular level. We also know that ketones deliver more oxygen at that cellular level. Think how important oxygen is to healing. Like we can go, so if we all wanted to hold our nose, we could probably hold our nose for maybe a minute or two, and then we'd probably have to tap out, right? We're not going to play any games here and do that test, but we know oxygen is so important for every single cell in our body. We know that ketones provide more oxygen, or they're oxygen sparing, better than sugar. That's why we suggest that our Navy SEALs that go down to low, that dive, or our astronauts that are up in space actually go on a ketogenic diet so they get more oxygen, they get more ATP at that cellular level. But I'm going to run it back around to fatigue and inflammation. Often when I speak in front of people, I simply say, who's tired? Like, who feels amazing all day long? You wake up, your feet hit the floor, you're giggling and happy like a baby. You eat when you're hungry and you just stop when you're done, and you feel great and your moods aren't yo-yoing, and you handle it well if somebody hits you in the car, your coupon doesn't work or your debit card doesn't work, and you handle that stress well, and then it comes time to go to bed and you just lay your head down and you go to bed. That's how our body should operate in a native state. In the native state, our body is well hydrated. In the native state, our body doesn't have inflammation. In a native state, our body doesn't start attacking itself and having autoimmune disease. In that native healthy state, our body actually optimizes and performs functionally. We're not sore after doing yard work or laundry. Our body shouldn't have that pain and stiffness, because in that native state, in ketosis, our body has reduction of inflammation. It gets more oxygen at that cellular level. We also know that if we're getting more oxygen to our brain, and if we think of type 3 diabetes as being Alzheimer's, which is a memory recall issue, it makes sense that we can put that information together and say, on a ketogenic diet, and data shows us, we have better recall. We have better memory. We remembered our grocery list. We remember where we parked our car. So I wanted to come to you very, very short and simply tonight to talk just a little bit about a Ketone 101. Every single Thursday night, I'm going to kind of select this time to talk a little bit about ketones, how it can help optimize your health, and how you can make little tiny changes and little shifts that can really make big shifts in daily of how you feel. So what does that look like? That means when you wake up in the morning, you have a big, healthy serving of fat in the morning. I have my coffee with MCT or keto cream or grass-fed butter, coconut oil, all those things. Or I have a porridge pudding made out of flax, or I love my flax cake in the morning, or I have a fat bomb, which is a decadent piece of fat for a snack. I have tuna salad, I have prime rib for dinner, and Brussels sprouts with butter and broccoli all over that. And you can go to my blog, which is askdrheather.net, and you can see a lot of recipes there, lots of pictures there. You can scroll this Facebook page. But I'm getting hundreds of questions, or what is all the talk about ketones? 2 years ago, no one would even talk about the word ketones, and now we see the leading researchers on TV shows, the doctor shows, Dr. Mercola, Dr. Pompa, the leading athletes talking about a ketogenic diet, because this is what's going to shift us, getting back to the basics. Getting on a ketogenic diet, cutting out the garbage, getting rid of the sugar is going to reduce inflammation. It's going to help our next generation of children grow and thrive. This is one of the facts that probably touches my heart the most, is that for the first time in 200 years, our children, I'm a mom of 4, our children are not supposed to outlive our life expectancy. I truly believe that if we all start changing and going back to the basics of a more ketogenic, low-carb, high-fat lifestyle, if we start eating how we were made to eat, that we can change that data and really help the next generation start thriving, not just surviving, right? We see kids, I talk about when I grew up in a small town called Paola, Kansas. We had one nurse for all the entire school district. Now we have several nurses for one elementary school, for one middle school, not just one nurse for the whole on pulling out splinters and teeth. We look at what's happening at our children, these peanut-free zones, all the medication. The data that Dr. Roush shared with me last week was that Every day, there are 10,000 Americans that turn the age of 65. The average 65-year-old is on at least 5 medications. So think about that for a minute. What's happening with our health care? What's happening with people who used to get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes when they were 80 are now getting diagnosed in their 20s. That's why we're seeing for the first time in 200 years, our children are not supposed to outlive us. Ironically, about 200 years ago is when we started implementing grains and sugars. And then we can start talking about drive-thrus and credit cards and meal deliveries and all those other prepackaged, pre-frozen foods. But tonight, my thing was I just wanted to give you a little bit of Keto 101. I'm going to invite different guests on throughout the week to have a 15, 20-minute talk about what ketones are. But simply, ketones are a native fuel source. It's not a foreign word. Your body's been in ketosis. If your doctor had you maybe fast for a colonoscopy or for a test, you could have been in ketosis. If you're an elite athlete and when you hit that bridge, so to speak, or when you hit that wall, maybe mile 6 or 7 for you, you actually go from burning glucose into ketones. Ketones, again, are that native fuel that protect our lean muscle mass. They help deliver more oxygen to our tissue. They help our brain fire much better. They reserve insulin. So you see lots of amazing studies of people who are type 1 diabetics on a ketogenic diet, a low-carb, high-fat diet, actually using less insulin every single day because their body's not needing it for the foods that they're using. So think what that means longevity-wise as our body starts to age. It's super, super exciting that this word ketones is hitting the social media. It's super exciting to see so many of you on here on Zoom and on Facebook Live. I made a whole bunch of notes, but I really wanted to keep it simple, saying we have 2 fuel sources every single day. Every single day when you wake up, you have a choice. I always say health is a verb. You can choose to wake up and be healthy and be happy and thrive, or you can choose to wake up and be grumpy and feed your body sugar and just survive. The change doesn't have to be 100%. It doesn't even have to be 50%. We know that even 20 to 25% change in reduction of carbohydrates in your diet can change your outcome in a lot of different disease states. So I'll often say inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard. So I had, again, a lot of messages today, but one I promised that I would address. So if you're a person who is a type 1 or type 2 diabetic, and you're a carbaholic in a high-carb diet, and you know that when you start cutting carbs, you don't feel good, that can be expected. Because think of that alcoholic, when they cut out all that sugar, your body doesn't feel very good. So go slow and steady. If you know that you're eating probably a couple hundred carbs a day, then maybe you need to go to 100 carbs for 10 or 12 days. Then maybe 70 carbs for the next 10 or 12 days. It doesn't have to go overnight. Dr. Westman's book, which is Keto Clarity, it's a great, easy read book that's been out for almost a century now. It's a great book to read. The protocol they use when they're taking people to a low-carb, high-fat diet is a 6-12-6. That means they do 6 carbs for breakfast, 12 carbs at lunch, and 6 at dinner. So that's about 25 total carbs. And we're not going to talk total and net today. We just want to get the Keto 101, understanding that we have a choice of fuel. We can use glucose when we're sugar burners, or we can use fats when we're ketone burners. And so I want you to do a little bit of homework yourself. You can cruise around my Facebook page. You can Google ketones and energy or ketones and inflammation. But what we do know is that our country, or globally, we are in a metabolic inflammatory state, from head to toe, from age to age, or womb to tomb. In order to stop helping people or start helping people go back to the basics, we have to start making those little tiny changes, which are just cutting out the carbs. Maybe for you, week 1, that is, I'm not going to have any sports drink or sodas. Even that little bit can make a whole bunch of difference in your body because you're not accumulating that sugar. Maybe you're the person who doesn't drink any sodas or sports drinks, but you know you have a sandwich and a bagel and a bread or 2 or 3 pieces of bread every day. You can look at amazing keto breads made with almond meal flour, coconut flour. You can buy it at the store. You can buy it online on Amazon. Lots of real, I would say there's a lot of organic keto cooks out there, or low carb, high fat ones. But today I just wanted to introduce the word ketones and ketosis. It is our native fuel source. Being in a state of ketosis simply means our body's burning fat for fuel. We can test that 3 different ways. You can either test it through a urine stick. You can go to your pharmacy. I should have brought some home with me. And you can simply just check your morning urine. If the stick turns a color, then it means that yes, you're in ketosis. Your body's burning fat for fuel because your body's using the fuel and dumping out what it doesn't need. Or you can pick your finger, just like you would do a glucometer or your glucose. You can check your ketone meter, 0.5 to maybe 4.0, 5.0, well, 0.5 to maybe 5.0. There's some discrepancy of where people want to be for ketones. That would be a normal level for being in ketosis. They also have some breathalyzers like the police officers use. You can also check for ketone body acetoacetate or acetone. That will also tell you if you're positive and for you in ketosis. And if you're trying to get to that state, then I would encourage you to use one of those avenues just so you can tell when your body's actually in that state. And you might not feel good. So next week, we're going to talk about some tricks, tools, and natural things you can do to help transition your body over so you don't feel awful as you're going into ketosis and making that transition. Because sometimes when you take away that sugar, we know sugar is more addictive than cocaine, that you've got to change your brain chemistry, you've got to change your body's biochemistry, your pH is going to change a little bit, your electrolyte and chloride balance is going to change a little bit, but slow and steady wins the race. So if you are wanting to look to a low-carb, high-fat diet, there's amazing resources out there. Google the word ketones, spend 5 minutes every day this week, and then we'll be back next week and talk a little bit more about ketones, a little deeper dive into that. I'm going to close with how do we get into ketosis if that's what we want to do. So I talked about someone who was maybe already consuming a couple hundred carbs, or we can follow, again, similar what Dr. Westman does is he takes someone from X amount of carbs and lowers them right down to 25. I would only suggest doing that in the accompaniment with the healthcare provider who's watching that. And again, check with your healthcare provider before starting any new diet. But ketogenic diet, you simply lower your carbohydrates down to 5% from 45 to 55. You increase your fats 75 to 85%, and that will get your body start burning all that stored glucose. Once your body's gone through that glucose that's been stored from eating the last few days, then your body's pretty smart. It says, I need some energy. I'm not getting it anymore from carbohydrates. She's not feeding me that soda and that juice and that fruit anymore. I'm not getting my oatmeal anymore for breakfast. I've got to get energy. I know what to do. My liver can go grab that fat that's stored around my tummy or my thighs or my bottom, and I can break that down and make my own ketones. My body knows how to do that, and that's what your body does when it switches from sugar burning into carbohydrate or ketone burning. So you can either do it on a ketogenic diet. That can take you days or weeks. You can look at those macros online. Some people like to do a kickstart and do a keto fast blast where they'll actually do a little bit of fasting. Dr. Jason Fung has some amazing information and books and research out about that. Again, do it under medical supervision. But you could fast for 2 or 3 days with some water and some bone broth or maybe some exogenous ketones so you feel okay as you transition over, because you've got to get rid of the blood sugar that's floating around there so your body can tap into that fat and break it down, because it is a byproduct of a ketogenic diet is people end up losing the unwanted fat and your body keeps the fat that it does need. So that's another way that your body can get in ketosis. And a lot of endurance athletes actually are in ketosis because their bodies are super efficient. They're burning through that glucose and glycogen pretty quickly. So they'll flip maybe over mile 5 or 6 if they're running, 10 or 15, 20, 25, 80 miles Ironman. They're going to be in that state of ketosis and continue to be there. So our body is very, very smart, but it's also not super selective. So it says whatever fuel source is available is the fuel source I'm going to use. So if you're feeding me sugar, I'm going to use that. If you're feeding me coconut oil and you're feeding me fats and you're not feeding me sugar, then I'm going to tell my liver to go break down that fat and I'm going to get myself some ketone bodies and I'm going to start running on ketosis. So it's an amazing diet, better focus, better energy, less inflammation, better sleep, because we know ketones actually down-regulate our excitatory neurons, so it helps mellow our brain out a little bit or actually calm down our nervous system. So a lot of amazing benefits. You can look at that. And again, there's pages and pages of research out there. So I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about ketones and how ketones can help optimize your life. I know there's a lot of questions going on here, so I'll take just a couple minutes. I promised myself I wanted to be really just short and really just introduce you to that word of ketones and where it came from and why it's popping up all over social media, all from some of the leading health and wellness experts. What I like to say is that ketones are disrupting the health and wellness nutrition world. We went from our standard Western diet, we kind of skipped over paleo, skipped over low carb, and went right down to keto because we've studied them for almost 100 years. So it's super exciting. Someone's asking about congestive heart failure. Again, I cannot diagnose, treat, or give medical advice. I want to share current collateral information with you. So what studies are going on today, what information is pertinent, because oftentimes it is confusing. You can spend all day long trying to pin the perfect recipe, but what it comes down to is getting back to the basics. What is the fuel our body was designed to burn? What fuel does our body burn best on? Like, what do I feel the best? And you can be your own advocate. Go eat a box of donuts and see how you feel, or go have a soda, whatever it is, or maybe go have a big bowl of guacamole on a big thing of fajitas without the rice and beans and have all the meat and peppers and see how you feel. Like, if you feel great, your moods are great, you sleep great, your body's going to tell you what it feels better on. So you can be a little bit of your own advocate on doing some bio-testing or biohacking yourself. But these words like MCT we'll talk about next week. We'll talk about ApoE4 a little bit because I got that question. But simply know you do have a choice when you're feeding your body. Every day your body needs fuel to operate. So when you start to prepare your food, and we want you to eat mindfully, which is being grateful for the food that you're giving and not eat in gluttony and not eat the whole box of donuts or the whole 5-gallon of ice cream or the whole bag of chips. We want to go back to that native state. Eat when hungry. Eat fat first. Fats are things like nuts and seeds, olives, avocados. So have a big salad with a bunch of oils and some avocado and some bacon bits and maybe a little feta cheese on top or some sesame seeds or something like that. All those are great healthy fats. You can find lists of those on my blog, which is AskDrHeather.net. It's free to sign up. There's about 1,000 different recipes there. My IT skills are low, but there should be some great information there for you. But I do want to thank you guys for joining me here tonight. I will jump back and answer some more questions, but I promise I want to be here at least for the next, I told Pam I'd be here for the next 8 weeks, either myself or another physician coming to you live, simply just talking a little about Keto 101. How do we avoid the life-changing disease processes that are happening from mental health disorders to rheumatoid arthritis to autoimmune diseases? It starts with the foods that we eat. Mary Frost wrote a great book called Going Back to the Basics, and that's what it is. Wake up, drink water, eat healthy fats, eat greens, eat lean meats, eat foods that are grown in your local and current environment, and your body can start to not just survive, but actually can start to thrive, start to feel better, and start to get better energy, get better sleep, start reducing inflammation, and amazing things can happen when you feed your body properly. So I want to thank you for joining me here tonight. Again, my name is Dr. Heather Carden, coming to you live from Ask Dr. Heather or at the Keto Doc. And thank you guys for coming from wherever you are. If you end up watching this on a replay because you want to know a little bit more about ketones, then I would love for you to give me a flower. It's not springtime here in Kansas. We had a snow day actually because we're out of school, but I love tulips, I love lilies, I love daisies, I love all sorts of flowers. So if you end up watching this replay, give me a flower. And if you want to have a certain question addressed next week, I will absolutely do that. I want to keep this, again, under 20 minutes and keep it highly pointed towards your questions of what you want to know. So when my inbox has got 200 or 300 questions, I want to pop on here and really answer those questions. Ketones are a native fuel source. It helps make our body easier. It helps make our body run much better, and it's what we were meant to burn. So have an amazing day. I look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday, 7:15 Central Standard Time. I'm going to be offering some online programs. You can go to my blog tomorrow, and those will be posted because some of you had asked me, I want more information. I don't just want a list of foods to eat. I need help. I need to know what my macros are, when I need to eat, what is this intermittent fasting thing. And that happens because our bodies are so confused if we're hungry or dehydrated or if we're craving, or the brain is about 60% fat, and we haven't had fat for so many years because they told us not to do it. So our brain's not functioning like we should. We're going to help you get to those points. So we're going to offer some different programs throughout the year to help you optimize your health and have the best year of your life in 2018. Have an amazing day. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.